Hi, everybody. This is Traven Rice. I'm coming to you from P&T Knitwear, the podcast studio, and we're recording the Lowdown Culture Cast, where we talk to all different types of culture changers on the Lower East Side and downtown. And today I'm really excited to have Mark DeGarmo here talking with me. Hello, Mark.
Thank you, Traven, and congratulations.
Thank you. Mark DeGarmo is the founder, executive, and artistic director of Mark DeGarmo Dance, which has been based on the Lower East Side for a very long time. And along with choreographing, programming, performing, creating so much, Mark DeGarmo Dance provides high-quality, interdisciplinary arts programming for New York City public elementary school students who live in economically challenged and disenfranchised communities through an organization called Partnerships in Literacy through Dance and Creativity. Not to mention, thus far in his professional choreographic career, DeGarmo has created over 100 dance and performance works and directed multiple tours in 13 countries. Since 2022, he's been exploring dance video. And since January 2019, he's performed monthly improvisations broadcast in Moveable Moments, this series. And coming up, Mark DeGarmo Dance broadcast its 15th annual virtual salon performance series for social change. And this theme of 2025 will explore the theme No Borders, No Hierarchies. And this year, it's an all-Mexico program celebrating USA-Mexico diplomatic relations. And the salon will feature real-time bilingual translation in both English and Spanish. So this is a lot.
We stay busy at Mark DeGarmo Dance. It was just the way I was brought up. I was brought up in a family that revered service. My parents were teachers originally, also very religious people, and also firefighters, police officers, EMS workers. So there's a deep sense of giving back to our communities, and I feel very honored to be able to do the range of work that I've done. Thanks again to my board of directors with Mark DeGarmo Dance, also known as Dynamic Forms, Inc. This is our 38th anniversary as a nonprofit on the Lower East Side, and our 43rd anniversary as an idea after I graduated Juilliard. I immediately launched into my own company's performance.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, well, it's really inspiring to see that all the different streams and all the cultural projects that you've been doing here for so long.
Well, we're so lucky on the Lower East Side. We're such a hotbed of culture, diversity, strands being woven through multi-generational richness and consciousness and intelligence and exploration. So, I mean, what an amazing opportunity we have living in this extraordinary community of ours.
I agree. Amen. So let's start with the salon. You know, I had heard about the salon, but I didn't realize it had been around for 15 years. I think my question is, so was it the pandemic that inspired you to go virtual?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we couldn't stop it. I mean, we had our gala planned 6 weeks out from when we locked down on, about March 17th, 2020. And 6 weeks later was our in-person salon that, thanks to my staff, 20-somethings immediately said, we've got it. We can do this technologically. We convinced our board of directors, which was a little bit, obviously older people, and more established professionals were a little wary of it. But again, our 2 administrative assistants who were right out of college really helped save the day with that. So they were the same people that helped support moving the salon online from our studio at the Clemente Center, where we've been doing it. I originated it as a process to help me develop my Frida Kahlo movement installation and offering, Las Fridas. And the amount of feedback that I got over the 6 years of developing it from various audiences, international audiences. We had the Cutlog Art Fair from Paris at the Clemente for 2 seasons, and people from all over the world, visual artists, then got to attend the salons. And I realized that there was such a richness for me as a creative person, as a choreographer, in that feedback loop that I wanted to share it out with other colleagues.
So tell us a little bit about what a new viewer or new audience person would see at the salon, so they have an idea.
So what we do is we give, what we're doing this year, again, as you had mentioned, our theme is no borders, no hierarchies. But I think what sets our salon apart is that they're based on works in process. So we're asking people not to show finished work. Sometimes they do just because out of inevitability and necessity, especially being online. You're going to see either a live performance. I believe that in the Mexico performances, 2 of the 3 artists are preparing and planning to broadcast live. So we're hoping that the Wi-Fi at all the locations holds out. If not, we have backup videotape of the work that they're presenting for feedback. And then for me as the curator, but also the facilitator of the conversation around the work in process with the public, with the artists, I think that's what's sort of unique, that I've adapted a feedback protocol, but simplified it so that we're offering, first of all, positive feedback. Because as people trying to create original work, it's like a tender tendril of a plant emerging, and it can so easily be nipped by frost or negativity or harshness. And I also then want to give the artist an opportunity to ask the audience a question, maybe something burning that they have that could help inform the rest of their process as they move the work, whether it's into a dance film, a full-scale production, a full-length work. I've had people that have shown a solo that then in 6 months they've reported back, I've now produced this live for 6 people. We've often had Indian classical dancers who've worked with us saying that they've really enjoyed working with a non-Indian only audience because it's given them the chance to experiment with their forms, whether Bharatanatyam or Kathak, that have very specific audience and cultural expectations. So it's enabled them to experiment and take their forms, their characters in directions that they can then bring back to their primary cultural audience, as it were.
So what are the guidelines when people submit? They submit a project that they're working on. And sort of how do you frame it? Is there always a different theme? How long does each performance last? And how do you decide what's included?
So this year, I was inspired with this theme, No Borders, No Hierarchies, because I knew of a dancer, a young woman in her 20s, who was from Iran, who was forced to flee Iran because she was a modern dance choreographer, and the government told her that they would imprison her if she continued to choreograph in Iran. So she successfully left the country, is now an expatriate. But her story moved me so much because I think sometimes we get into a very two-dimensional relationship with the idea of borders and hierarchies and don't really appreciate that for some people and some countries, some cultures, this is a life and death issue. So we try to provide a very straightforward and simple application, which people fill out a Google form, basically, and they send us a link to a work in progress they're thinking about, or if they haven't even started it yet, to some previous works. You know, we want to take a quick look at their CV or their resume or even a quick bio that gives us a sense of their professional training. Because we reach out to people beyond the dance community per se, to movement artists as well. We've often have people from circus applying, or even had drummers from the Bronx apply. You know, a lot of people, which has been great. So it's been fun to see that range. Basically, what I'm interested in is the person applying more than the work per se. But I try to keep it very simple, the application. And then basically, as the curator, I'm looking quickly. I can usually tell within a minute or 30 seconds, probably whether this is going to be a viable artist, whether they have the maturity, the experience, the depth, whether they're aligned with whatever the theme might be. You know, we just started introducing the idea of the theme recently, sort of for fun, and also to push this idea of social justice forward through dance, because in my experience, I feel like dance sometimes is sort of the last art form to the table around social issues, not for protests or showing up in, like at the Women's March. We had a huge New York City dance contingent there, for example, way back when. But I think in terms of the work itself and the content and pushing the envelope beyond just the form itself or the formality or the classicism itself. So I'm just curious about that, because I don't know how to do it myself sometimes either, but I love to see people playing with these, struggling with these issues of how to make our art relevant to others in our community.
And would you frame it as contemporary dance?
We have all kinds of forms that emerge. I mean, my own background is, I went to Juilliard, so I have a classical ballet and classical modern dance training and background, and I worked with founders of American modern dance like Hanya Holm, and worked with Anna Sokolow, who grew up on the Lower East Side. But no, it's open to every form. We've had a classical ballet dancer emigrate to Canada who was a soloist with the Mariinsky Ballet, who was experimenting with taking control of all of the production aspects for the first time in her life, including the video editing and costuming. And so that was amazing to hear her story. We've had experimental people doing almost more like clown theater from Spain, Madrid. We've had a gentleman who worked with the Australian National Ballet, I believe it was, from Berlin, who did a whole broadcast from his bathtub, and it was all about what is performance, what is rehearsal, what is enough. We've had, like I said, a huge range of classical Indian performers.
Yeah.
We also have produced our colleagues in Michoacan, who have a Purépecha youth ensemble, 100 strong, and so traditional Purépecha dance was presented. So I'm very curious about the range of dance.
It sounds like it's kind of taken all different forms and shapes, and it's experimental in some ways. In a lot of ways, it's a lot about pushing different boundaries and trying things out for all different cultural types of backgrounds and interests.
Absolutely. And that's why I've been so excited to make it be global, that we could do this through the pandemic with going online.
So tell us about Las Fridas, because it sounds like a long-term project that you've really been developing over a long time.
Yeah, this is its 15th anniversary. I've been going to Mexico, living, working, for 45 years, something like that. And I went to the Blue House, Frida Kahlo's home and museum in the 70s, when you could still kind of wander through and basically lie down in her bed, nobody would say anything. I mean, we didn't, but, there were no guards, there were no cameras. You could basically have full access to anything in the house. So that was its own experience, because it had a spirit, as you can imagine, that I think as you get bigger crowds and things get more organized, formally, there's a different kind of energetic maybe that'll emerge, because you rarely get to be in a room alone. I had a lot of early death trauma. I experienced the death of 4 fathers and father figures from ages 4 to 18. And I knew that I wasn't ready to create anything about Frida Kahlo, but I have early files from the 70s about a work I wanted to create about her. So about 15 years ago, I realized I had enough life experience. It was time to tackle this. It took 6 years to create the work, the 60-minute work for 2 women over age 60. Part of the premise was, what if Kahlo had lived beyond age 47? What I'm realizing is it's also about my own relationship with Marie Baker Lee, my dance partner of 38 years, who retired a year and a half ago after our last season of Fridas in our studio theater in the Clemente. And so there's a lot of different layers. So yes, it's about Frida Kahlo, but it's not meant to be her biography. It's a non-linear, surrealist work that deals, as I was mentioning, with these three different layers. My own early death trauma, which made me, I think, align with Kahlo's pain. My relationship for all these years with Marie Baker Lee, an amazing dance performer who I think is unparalleled, very unheralded, but an absolute amazing stage presence. And obviously Frida Kahlo. But I realized also that I was originally connected to the performing arts through theater of the absurd and surrealist theater that I was reading at my boarding school, Northfield Mount Hermon, when I was a junior in high school. And the discovery of Beckett and Pirandello and Albee was just like so amazingly exciting that I ended up going home in the summers in my rural New York State town and creating a small children's theater group with 25 kids in our 1,000-strong community. And we did a series of productions. I wrote original plays and happenings and things dealing with the Vietnam War and pushing, back against the Vietnam War because I realized that I might be drafted. I was at the age where as I became of age at 18, I might have to go fight or be called to fight or flee. So I was attracted to dance when I went to see a performance of Lar Lubavitch at Jacob's Pillow when I was 15, and that's when it was like a lightning bolt that dance was my path. And it was weird. It took 3 years to come to New York at age 18 to leave Oberlin, and I just jumped right into New York with no training, no background, no family support, like 10 cents in my pocket, and that was it. So I think that this piece, Las Fridas, really encapsulates this early sensibility as well of theater of the absurd and nonlinearity. We used the images of Kahlo in her life and the paintings, and we did extensive research over those 6 years of the production. But it's very unique, and we've had people come, even a Broadway reviewer who came the last time, who does online reviews, and other people earlier that said, this is a new form. This isn't dance. This isn't theater. What is this? So I don't even know what to call it. It's a kind of performance art. It's definitely a performance, but it's, again, I guess it's not that it's trying, but it has broken boundaries. So in a way, again, we're bringing all these different elements and ancestors to bear on this presentation. And so I'm very excited that we'll have, hopefully, the opportunity to bring it to Mexico. We were supposed to be working with Ofelia Medina next month. That's why we were going to do the All Mexico broadcast from Mexico. But unfortunately, she got a role with Diego Luna, had to withdraw for now. But Marie Baker Lee has agreed to come back. And so we're looking forward to bringing it back to Mexico, hopefully to Teatro UNAM, where it was being produced for 2 weeks in Coyoacan, across the street from the park where Frida and her sister Christina played as children.
So how did your work with students begin, and how has that evolved?
It has always been a parallel path for me. I had originally approached Martha Hill, the director at the Juilliard School, who also founded the programs down at NYU and at Bennington College before she set up the Juilliard program. And as I was when I was exploring going to Juilliard, I remember asking Miss Hill, when I just sort of showed up randomly, if I study at Juilliard, will I be able to get a job? And her response was, well, dear, you'll always be able to teach. And I know that a lot of artists don't like to hear that. But again, coming from a family of service and teachers, like there was no higher calling. So she called up the director at the Lincoln Center Institute at the time and said, I've got this young man and he wants to get involved. And I think it took me 3 years of applying and staying in touch with the director when I finally got a job, and then worked 14 years at Lincoln Center Institute for the Arts and Education in New York. But I realized after I came back from my Fulbright in Peru in 1999 that I wanted to do something more, that I felt like the work that I had been involved with arts education in New York had a deficit, that I wasn't going deep enough, that these were really exposure programs and audience development programs, which are very important and have their place. But I had a deeper ambition to create a program that could really change students' lives. And so, again, because I'm a writer and a choreographer and just am fascinated by creative process, and my own doctorate is in movement, the theme of my dissertation involved the relationship between movement improvisation and nonverbal learning. And I'd had so many experiences teaching, whether at Lincoln Center or elsewhere, with adults and children that were totally life-changing in super radical ways.
Like what?
Well, there was one woman who was a child of the Holocaust, and I was working with a team up at Lincoln Center in a 3-week summer seminar with 3 other artists in different art forms. And this teacher I was working with brought me a book that she had with her, that her family had brought with them from Germany, that included Hanya Holm and her work in the 1920s with Mary Wigman in Germany. And she gave that to me as a gift. And she had collapsed in the women's restroom and was like sobbing after one of our dance workshops. And later she said to me, what happened was that, this was like 6 months later, she came back and we were in touch, and she said, what happened was I had given all these photographs of myself as a child in Germany to my therapist 15 years ago. And after your 3-week seminar, I asked for them back. I was able to receive them. So I just felt like, again, it was sort of random, and I felt like it wasn't me doing it. It was the dance itself. It's the form and the medium that we all have access to. So I think that's been my biggest dream, is to create access for children who wouldn't have access otherwise. Yes, they might certainly have lots of access in our Black, African American, and Hispanic, Latinx communities to dance, of course, and movement and forms that are historic and important and cultural, and provide a map, an ancestral map, cultural map. But because we're working with creative processes and we're teaching not only how to follow movement, which is typically what happens in dance, and not working on developing original work or developing your own improvisational abilities or dance compositional abilities, we've sort of flipped the paradigm where we've said, okay, it doesn't matter if you don't have any technique. What matters is that you understand how to generate movement from yourself, and then how to work with others in a group process, a communitarian process, a democratic process of sharing ideas, allowing give and take. At a certain age, it's grades 3, 4, 5, it can be a little hard. You feel very, wedded to your idea, and it's the best, and it's hard to hear that other people feel the same way about theirs. So, and then the writing about the work. There's experiential education theory that says it's not enough to have an experience. You have to reflect on it in various modalities or media to make sense of it for yourself. So enabling the children, and we're working a lot with multilingual learners and students with disabilities, as well as general ed or gifted and talented children. We can work with visual art representation in their dance journals, or we can work, if they're nonverbal, or we can work with writing in traditional journal format, or advocacy letters, or poetry, or other forms of representation of what's happened to them in their emotions and in their sequential actions and memory of what they've done.
Mm-hmm. And so what kind of changes or growth do you see in them after they go through some dancing and then writing about it?
Well, we have, again, the program you mentioned, Partnerships in Literacy Through Dance and Creativity. We had a researcher from Johns Hopkins School of Education and Research come in and did a mixed methods study. And it showed that our children's New York State reading scores increased by a statistically significant amount. There was earlier work we did with one of our schools on the Lower East Side where we worked with the math coach and also who was a sociology professor at NYU, and she brought in like 100 of her sociology students from NYU to work with us over 3 years. And she felt and saw in the data that students' math scores were increasing as well. And because grade 4 is used, reading tests are used nationally for commercial prison production in this country, I felt that if we could help disrupt the school-to-prison pipeline through dance education, a low-cost, non-pharmaceutical intervention, that we could help revolutionize education and bring the body and embodiment back into education. So I've always been fascinated about this conversation, and also about how do we heal the Cartesian divide? How do we heal what we think is a rift between our mind and our body? And there's so much research now that's showing that the body is a source of intelligence, clearly, and the emotions are also a source of intelligence. And then the other things we see with our children is without a doubt, there's deep social and emotional learning going on. Children's self-confidence shifts radically. They start to understand that they have this authentic self and side to themselves because, like Martha Graham said, the body doesn't lie. And so you're being present to yourself as well as to your classroom and to others. We've had children who were selective mute who started speaking in dance, and then that speaking in grade 2, they'd never spoken before, carried through into their classroom and into their lives. We've had children who have self-identified that they were victims of sexual assault. We work with elementary children, and this was able to come forward transparently, and then, thank goodness, with the support of their school personnel to support them and to get the help and the safety they needed. But things come up through the body that you can't suppress, and I think it helps heal. I think it helps us grow. To see the confidence of children that are terrified at the beginning of the idea of performing on stage. So many of us are very, very inward people and not projecting outward. It's painful to think about being seen and having to share that way. And, we really respect that. But because of the support we can give just through the form and the way you teach and work with elementary children, they find their way. And by the end, typically, they're like ecstatic about, this is what I achieved, this is who I am, this is what I know, and I can't wait to do more of it at some point with someone else. But we really see big changes.
I think it's very inspiring, and I hope that all of this wonderful work continues. And all the support that you've offered, to everybody, all the dancers that you've met and come across. I really think it's a wonderful way of pushing things forward.
Thank you so much, Traven.
Yeah, thank you.